Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Toomey. I'm president of Geographic Solutions. At Geographic Solutions, we specialize in developing and maintaining online software solutions for the workforce development industry. Our software helps people get a job, including providing career advice, appropriate training, access to government benefits, including unemployment insurance. Regardless of the individuals that we're serving, our software is geared towards providing the necessary tools as a means for gainful employment, regardless of background or barriers. Over the next few months, join us for our Pathways to Employment webinar series. In each episode, we'll highlight how our clients are using our products in unique and inspiring ways, in ways to help job-ready individuals secure employment. Hey, we're glad you have joined us today and hope you'll walk away with new insights and perspectives. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Paul. Good day, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Mac McCarthy, and I'm a business analyst now in my 5th year with Geographic Solutions. I'm actually on our company's staff efficiency team, whose areas of responsibility include many of the modules our North Carolina friends will be talking about today. Just a little background on me. Prior to joining Geographic Solutions, I worked in American Job Centers for a number of years in Florida, with roles including WIOA case manager, a data analyst, and quality assurance as well. We have an excellent webinar planned for you today, but I'm going to let my co-host, Evan Brenner, tell you more about that. Evan?
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. When the pandemic intensified in March and working from home became widespread, in North Carolina, our partners worked to affect change and to come up with ways to reach individuals through different tools that we offer, many of which are staff efficiency tools. They innovated with these tools such as VOSGreeter, remote signature, live chat, and document management to serve the individuals in new and unique ways. And now I'd like to turn it over to Michael Hoskins.
Good afternoon, good morning to all those wherever you're watching from. Appreciate your time this afternoon. We're going to walk through a little bit of some of the things that North Carolina has done to use the tools that Geographic Solutions provide. Some of them we had already in North Carolina, and some of them we worked closely to procure them once the pandemic started. So we'll walk just through a little bit of that and talk about how we've done it in North Carolina and hopefully share some of that information with you. On our session today, we have 4 presenters from the state. My name is Michael Hoskins. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Division of Workforce Solutions. I have colleagues also from our Division of Workforce Solutions is Brian Lane. He's one of our regional analysts. I have 2 colleagues from the local area. One is Susan Gerke. She's the Center Manager in Guilford County. And I have Anthony Rogers, who is the Strategic Initiatives Coordinator for Guilford Works. A little bit about North Carolina. We are set up in North Carolina with 23 workforce development boards. Those workforce development boards are a variety of solutions. Some of them are single county boards, and some have up to 11 counties in their board. So it's a wide variety of how they serve across the state. Some are in more rural areas, some are in more urban areas, and depend on how they serve. We also divide our state into what's called a prosperity zone, and there's not a direct correlation between the boards and the prosperity zone. Sometimes there's a little overlap, but it works closely with our economic development side of the state to make sure there's a connection with how the economic prosperity zones are set up. So we have different staff, and Brian Lane, who's one of our speakers, works in one of those prosperity zones in the state. In the state, we also currently have 95 career centers. We call them NCWorks career centers in North Carolina that are set up as our American Job Center. Most of them will provide both Title I or Title III services in each of the office. Some of them are a little more specialized, but those are how we are set up across North Carolina. We're going to spend a lot of time working with our centers from Guilford County. So we're going to spend time talking about a little bit about Guilford County. In 2019, the population of Guilford County was estimated to be just over 500,000, making it the third most populous county of North Carolina. It is one of the single county boards in North Carolina. There are two of our NCWorks career centers in the Guilford County. One is in the city of Greensboro, and one is in High Point, which is just south of Greensboro. A little bit of the information about that. As of November 2020, the unemployment rate was about where we were at the state. We were still at 7%. Population shows us 3.1% of the nation's population. These are all of our labor markets data that comes out of our NCWorks system. So a little bit of what we did when COVID-19 started to become an issue. Our governor of North Carolina put a stay-at-home order, which meant our staff, especially our state employees, had to stay at home and they could not go to work at our centers. So it quickly, as I'm sure many states did, had to transition to a ability to provide services remotely. It took a little bit of effort. Some technology we had to procure, some things we had to sort of figure out a way to do that, and how is the best solution for that. So we work closely at the Division of Workforce Solutions with those 23 workforce development boards and the 95 career centers that serve the citizens of North Carolina to come up with a way that we could provide services remotely. So in many of our boards, our areas, the workforce board director, they still may have some of their staff going into the center. All of our state staff, I'm not sure what we missed, but all of our state staff were sent home at the beginning of the pandemic. So these are the 4 challenges that North Carolina sort of identified of how we were going to solve some of the remote services. Number 1 is how could we collect verification forms needed in order to enroll a participant into a WIA Title I program or into our TAA program. Somewhat related to that, similar, was how could we obtain signatures needed from an individual? If an individual could not come into the center to sign, how would we collect their signatures on their applications or on other forms within the system? The third challenge that we had to come up with was how could the individual job seekers, the individuals, reach out to our staff? If our staff were not in their centers, how would we be able to reach out to staff and connect with them? And the fourth one we're going to talk about is how could staff serve an individual who called in? So we set up a way that individuals could still call and reach. In many of our centers, we were able to forward our phones to a cell phone. We eventually put in a statewide call center, was able to forward and direct calls to that. But once we got in talking to the individual, how could they disperse that work to the staff who was still working remotely? So the first item we're talking about is collecting of verification documentation. So as everyone is probably aware, in Title I and in our trade program, TAA program, there's some very specific verification data validation requirements that require specific forms to be collected in the system. So we had to have a way that we could collect this documentation, but it had to be secure information. So one of the issues that we talked about originally was that people could just email copies or take pictures of their forms and send them via email or text message to staff. But as you probably all are aware, email is not a secure solution. So we did not want to be sending any PII confidential information over email. So we wanted a better solution and how we could come up with a way to do that. So we, in North Carolina, we already had a module that Geographic Solutions provides called the document management. And document management allows staff, typically in the centers, to scan a document directly into the system. And so if the individual was in the center, they would hand that document off to the staff who had a scanner connected to their computer at their office and would scan it and load it and attach it to the individual's record. But when we were no longer in the centers, that became a problem that they could not do that. There was a capability that was built into the system that did allow the individual to go and load documentation themselves, but it was a very embedded, hidden feature of the system. So the individual would go in, they'd have to go to their profile, they'd have to go to document management, and eventually they may find, and probably couldn't find, the ability they could upload some of that documentation. So it was important for North Carolina. There were certain forms that we had to have uploaded into the system, and one is the Social Security card. We did not, because of the PII nature of that, we did not allow that to be emailed at all to the staff. So we required that anybody who had to upload that Social Security card for the verification, we wanted to be able to load that. So the first step that we did is that Geographic Solutions provides a way that we can create what's called a custom menu. So North Carolina actually went and created a custom menu to sort of set up a way that the individuals on the left-hand side in their menu bar would see a ability to view their documents or to upload a document or to scan a new document. This worked out fairly well. We could not only add that to the menu, but we could quickly document in a one-page solution that we could share with individuals. So when an individual logged in, they saw a widget that says, these are the instructions of how you can upload a document. So when we shared this menu item with Geographic Solutions, they actually helped us a lot by actually embedding it, incorporating it as part of the standard menu system, so that it was more consistent with the way it worked. It matched everything, and it definitely put everything in the right place. And so they did that a couple weeks after we were able to turn our menu on, and that was something they turned around real quick. So now when an individual has documentation, they want to load a driver's license, Social Security card, a birth certificate, specifically those documents that are highly confidential, highly PII, we give them the steps that they need, that they can go and upload all that documentation themselves. When the staff logs in and they're in that staff view of the individual, they'll still have that complete access to all of the documents that have been loaded. One of the nice features of this upload is if I am on a phone, if I'm on a mobile device and using the upload feature, I can actually take a picture. So if I have my copy of my Social Security card, I can log on to our VOS system, NCWorks, on my cell phone. I can quickly go to this menu and say upload a document as an individual, and when I click the upload, one of the options is a phone or a file on your cell phone. So just take a picture. It allows me to quickly snap a picture of my driver's license, my Social Security card, my birth certificate, and upload it. So it makes it fairly easy for the individual to do. And so that was a way we could share that information. So that was the first challenge that we came up, worked closely with Geographic Solutions to help with one of their efficiency modules. The second part of that, as part of our virtual enrollment process, is we wanted to allow an individual to enroll into a Title I program. But in order to do that, a lot of the application required self-attestation. Each of our boards had different forms they may want to sign. So we had to come up with a policy of how they could sign this information in the system. So originally in North Carolina, we released a policy and we came up with a couple of different solutions. We worked closely with South Carolina and Tennessee to sort of model and how some of the ways they were doing it. And the suggestions that we made is that you could use a third-party product like a DocuSign or an Adobe Sign to go out and to sign those forms. The staff could print out the application as a PDF, attach it to DocuSign, and then send that back. That is secure that way. We felt confident that it was secure, but it's fairly expensive. The envelopes you pay for a product like a DocuSign is about $2 an envelope. So that cost quickly added up. And each of the boards were doing it a unique way. There were some occasions we allowed people, they could just take a picture of their signature at the end of an application, print it out and sign it. That none of those were really, we weren't real happy with it, and it was very inconsistent because each of the boards sort of had their own way of doing that. But one of the features that Geographic Solutions had demonstrated in a previous conference was their ability to do remote signature in the VOS application, something we were really excited about when COVID hit, and they ended up having to delay the version 20 Sapphire release. We knew that was not going to be part of it, but we reached out, I'm sure many other states did as well, and we asked about the ability, could we still get that electronic signature piece to make that consistent and make it simple for the individual to be able to sign. So GSI quickly was able to integrate that into some of our applications, specifically our Title I WI application, our Wagner-Peiser, our trade applications. That was a quick turnaround on that. It made a very simple and efficient way for both staff to sign it remotely, as well as I could then send a message off to the individual who could be at home. They would get a text message or an email or a message within the center in their system, and they could go and view the application and quickly sign that they agree to that. And it stores that picture of that digital signature right there back in my application, which then saves that information in my document. So it got rid of all of our hodgepodge of solutions that was somewhat expensive, and it would quickly allow us to turn that on. I think North Carolina was one of the first states to ask for this feature. We had to procure this from GSI as an additional cost. Cost was minimal. It was much cheaper than it could be, probably, because of what we would have had to pay if we had to do it with those third-party products. So we were very happy to be able to get that and add that to our module. It made a secure way that we could get that information. And the nice thing, again, if an individual is on their telephone, they get a text message, they can sign the application, view and sign the application right on the telephone. So it makes it very simple for the individual. The third challenge that we had in North Carolina was that if our staff were not into the centers, how could they reach out to our staff? So a lot of the staff were working from home, working remotely. Some staff may still be working in a center, but it was a wide variety of how we were doing it in North Carolina. And so, but even if they were working in the center, our centers were not open at the time to allow individuals to come into the center. So we wanted a better way that individuals could reach out. So we had actually looked at the help desk module, the live chat module that GSI had. We had got a demo from our friends in Maryland on that a while back. And so we, in North Carolina, one of our boards had a standalone multi-channel solution that they were paying for. And when they reached out to that vendor to add a statewide implementation, it was a very expensive option for us to try to do it as statewide. So again, we reached out to GSI and said, what options do we have to get the live chat module added into our NCWorks product? So within a month, we were able to, and most of that was the North Carolina purchasing process, to get a quote, to get the system installed and get it up and running and set up so that when an individual logs into NCWorks, they will see in the bottom right-hand corner a live chat option. When they click on live chat, it will then be directed to one of the state staff that are logged in. And so we had a little different model than some of the other states. So we know the Maryland model had a very small number of people logged in, where in North Carolina, we may have 100 or more people logged in at any one time. So the way it would work is when somebody would chat, it would it to the next available person on that list. We worked closely and submitted a request with GSI to make some changes to that, to sort of work a little better to the model we were trying to adhere, and that came out a few months later, which now would, if an individual goes to chat, the first person it looks to connect them to is their case manager. So if they have an assigned case manager in the system, either on our trade application or a Title I, that would be who their chat would pop up. So it immediately allows the individual to reach directly out to their case manager that way. If the case manager does not happen to be logged in, it next looks at, is there somebody else in that same office as the case manager? And it lets them chat with them, because they usually can modify the record and work with the individual. And if the third case, it would look in the Workforce Development Board area. And finally, it could still go to a statewide view. So our intent was that anytime somebody would want to do a chat, they would always get some response. And so we had as many people we had on, and many different paths we can get to it. So it was a quick way that we could get people to connect to the staff that were working remotely. So for the fourth challenge, I'm going to turn it over to Susan, who's the manager in Greensboro. So Susan, why don't you go from here?
And Michael, Susan, Brian, Anthony, if I'm wondering with the live chat, if you have any interesting stories about the rollout or anything that was unique about that. It's an interesting juxtaposition going, from a in-person assistance to a live chat assistance.
Yeah, I'll try to give a little information. We did after the first week or so that we were running, I had an opportunity to go and sort of look at the reports and see the amount of usage that we were getting. I found an example where we had a staff person who answered a chat. The person was not necessarily in their area at that time. It was just, they were the next person on the link. They spent several hours working back and forth, answering questions, helping the individual with their resume, and going through that. A lot of times what we see now is that after a certain back and forth in the chat, that the staff will say, well, do you have a phone number? And they'll actually call the person, because sometimes it's easier to talk to them on the phone, but it's a great place to get started. Get them connected to that staff person so they can start that question. We in North Carolina, in our division, we do not handle the unemployment insurance, but a majority of our questions were coming in were about unemployment insurance, both on the phone and on our chat. So the chat module, we were able to set it up so that if your question was on unemployment insurance, you got a canned response that if we were unable to help, we really weren't allowed to help, that you had to call a different number. So that would, limited the amount of interaction that staff had to answer that same question, but it still gave us a way to give some feedback to the individual as they were going out and asking those questions, because they were all looking for help with their unemployment at that point.
Excellent.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Susan Gerke. I am the Career Center Manager in Guilford County at the Greensboro location. And I'm here to talk to you about how we were able to transition our VOSGreeter into offering remote services. So in earlier March of 2020, we had just gotten these brand new beautiful iPads that we were going to start having people log in when they came into the center using the touch screen as the interface. And then come around St. Patrick's Day, we all found ourselves in this situation where we were learning how to transition and shift our perspective in order to offer these services digitally. So what we were able to do is utilize that VOSGreeter check-in system in order for staff to manually input and track services remotely with individuals. So what we did is we had the staff get their access set up. So if they were on the call with somebody would call in, we'd ask them their name and their social, the last four of their social, and they could be input manually by the staff into the VOSGreeter system. This was able to help us transition as at that time, as Michael mentioned, the state staff were remote. We did have some staff in the center. We had a hybrid model of a call center where we were able to transfer calls to one another in between the staff in the center and the staff that were remote, and able to utilize the VOSGreeter to effectively track the services. This was a huge benefit in these times as we were transitioning into a new model and making sure that we had that seamless transition of staff services and assisting the individuals and the members of the public as they were transitioning, as they were facing unemployment issues, and as they were facing the different services that we were able to help them out with regularly. So Michael, you can take us to the next slide. So this is what it would look like. We would check them in. It takes you to the next slide. If somebody was already a registered NCWorks individual, the next slide would be us putting in their birthday. So we'd fill that in. And then the next slide. And then this is our order, these are our reasons for the visit. So at that time, a great deal of people were experiencing unemployment issues. So we would check that. As far as unemployment benefits, we would give them our limited response of what it is that we could do, help them navigate to the unemployment and to the Division of Employment Security so they could do their filing. But there were other reasons that people were calling to. A lot of people were transitioning employment. We experienced a high volume of people that were in the service industry and food service and hospitality that would be looking for something else. So there were still people seeking employment and training services at this time. And we were able to utilize the VOSGreeter to provide those services over the phone and track those individuals and the services that were provided. Next slide. This was especially helpful for us, the comment section. So in the standard office environment, it would be a front desk person or a greeter that would be checking the individual in, and then they would transition over to be served by one of any number of staff. As we were doing this remotely, the comment section lets you check the different reasons that the person would be calling. So for instance, a lot of people were experiencing unemployment, we would put that in. But if they were interested in training, if they were interested in additional services, if we heard anything that they would need a referral for, we were able to track that in to the comment section. Now that we are back into the office, we are able to utilize that for interstaff communication. So as someone checks in at the front desk, we can list their reasons for visit. And underneath, since March, there has been added they can put their phone number in. So if there was an instance where somebody would be waiting and would be needing a call back or a call to let them know that their appointment is ready or that somebody is ready to see them, that has been added to the bottom. It has been widely beneficial to have this service available to us to better serve the customers that we're seeking and offer them the seamless delivery of services. Next slide. Then this is what it pops up as far as their visit reasons. Again, this is slightly different than what was offered when we were 100% remote and tracking everything via the phone and via offering services over the phone. But when we are now back in the office, what this does is after somebody checks in, different levels of staff can be alerted based on their reasons for visit. So for instance, a WIOA staff or a veteran staff could be notified based on what that individual is checking in for. The other benefits is you can check everything from wait time, see how long somebody's been waiting, and then see what a staff is assisting and how long they're assisting and for what reasons they're assisting. So all of these, this pops up, and it has been a huge benefit to us as we're able to serve customers. And we have absolutely loved having this service available in order to transition to remote services and keep up as things continue to change and grow. Next slide. And so this is the final slide for me. So this shows you some of the reports that you can pull on the tail end. We greatly utilize that greeter report by office. So what we do is at the end, we can pull those. We can see how many individuals were served in a given period. We can see who has served those individuals. We can see their reason for visit. And what we do from this is we are also able to pull their phone numbers, and we do a customer satisfaction survey that we text out to people, and we are able to gather information and customer satisfaction feedback based on the VOSGreeter reports. So I'll take it over to the next slide. Thank you all so much, and we'll be around to answer questions at the end. handing it off. So.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brian Lane. I'm an analyst in the Northwest Prosperity Zone of North Carolina, one of those zones Michael showed earlier. And I also support offices that are implementing the VOSGreeter throughout the state, along with one of my coworkers. And what I want to kind of talk about here, and Anthony and I are going to kind of switch slides between us as we go through this, but a bit on some of the adjustments that we had to make for this to work as a call logging system rather than an actual in-person check-in system. And one thing about the VOSGreeter, it was easy to convert it. We used tools that were already in the system, privileges and settings. And so that's what we want to have a look at. But we had gone live in Guilford March 2nd, 2020. And within 2 weeks, we had to make the conversion. So we had literally just started using the product. And it was initially implemented as a standalone system. The VOSGreeter can be run on any device. It's basically device independent, any internet connected device. And it can be, say, a laptop or any touch screen. And what was used there in Guilford and High Point offices were standalone kiosks, and they had iPads mounted on them kind of at just standing height. Customers would come in and self-check in, and then their process from that point was, once if the customer had difficulty, they still had reception available there that could assist them with the check-in, and then once they were checked in, they would advance on to their next step in the process, and also staff would be notified that their customers had arrived. So that was the initial process. It was very much the in-person process that VOSGreeter was designed for. So then we had to look at how we could convert that and do so rather quickly. So I'm going to do the next slide.
Yeah, Brian, and I just want to point out that the significance of VOSGreeter, which was listed on the previous slide, just the fact that it was set up to streamline the check-in process, and really I want to just point out that it essentially replaced one of those standalone systems that really required staff to log in separately, but then it also required customers to log in separately and additionally to the other system of record. So customers were essentially checking in twice previously or prior to the VOSGreeter. So at that point, the implementation began at both our centers in Greensboro and High Point. We did have a pilot period where we introduced our staff to the features of VOSGreeter, and that was just because we were privy to the iPads and had some additional tools around. So we set up stations so that staff were familiar with that. Then we implemented the tool, which again captured the customer's information. But as we saw the onset of the pandemic, and actually prior to the governor's stay-at-home order, we started having the conversation that what if the centers have to close? Then we started to discuss how we could utilize the technology that we already have to record the individuals, and basically how can we serve customers and at the same time document the services that we're providing. Hence the reason for looking at the transition from the check-in system for customers coming into the center to remote services or remote access for those individuals. Oh, next slide, Michael.
You know, Anthony and Susan, and really to everybody, I just kind of wanted to ask right here at a good point. You know, once the centers begin to reopen, and I know some of them probably already are, how do you think this virtualization will change the way that services are delivered, if at all?
Susan, I think you're muted.
I think you're muted, Susan.
Well, as Susan's getting that, I will say, because of that transition and the virtual services, it did and it has allowed us to actually serve more individuals. Looking at the capacity to serve the individuals in the center as we have reopened to some extent, but we're still offering those virtual remote services. So it actually allows us to now address more of the community in a way that we hadn't before, because it spreads our staff and our ability to serve those individuals.
Okay, and this is Brian. I've had to switch to basically cell phone. I had a power outage there for just a moment. Can I be heard?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
We can hear you, Brian, and we can see you, Susan, but we can't hear Susan.
Okay, so what we're looking so I'll just continue with this slide then. What we're looking at, this is our configuration change that we had to make, and this is a privilege on the back end under the admin section. When we were first checking in, of course, as I said, customers were checking themselves in. And what we had done as an additional security measure, we didn't want any risk at all of those customers being able to back into a staff view. And the accounts that run the VOSGreeter are basically staff accounts. So we had created a single staff account that would only run the greeter. And so that was what was running on the kiosk. And then so even if it were possible to back into it, there's really nothing they could do. It had no privileges with that data. But what that meant for staff to be able to run that is if they needed to manually run the greeter, they had to do their normal work in one browser and then say run a greeter implementation in another browser. So one change we made on that was to enable all the staff to be able to make that change. And we had started to make that change a week prior to the implementation, just before the shutdown order, because we were growing concerned about the number of people, well, touching the kiosk and the hygiene of it as far as COVID transmission. And we knew some customers were getting concerned about it. So we enabled that privilege. So if a customer wanted just to be checked in by a staff member, they could do so. And then in order to convert to just a call logging system, we enabled it for the majority of staff that would be taking and all the ones that would be taking the calls. So that ability enabled that for them. And that let them run the greeter. So, and of course, we will probably continue to keep that somewhat in place even as we go back to in-person, to let staff be able to get customers unstuck who are trying to check in. So, but basically this allows them from the staff view, once it's enabled, they go to the check-ins list, they just click on check-in customer manually, and then a new pop-up opens that lets them do a one-time check-in. And then as they need to, they can check in those customers manually and select the reasons on behalf of the customers as we showed earlier. So, and I'll pass to the next slide.
Thank you, Brian. Susan, go ahead and see if you can, it says you're self-muted. See if you can hit mute and let's see what happens here. Still nothing, huh? All right, on this side you are unmuted, so I'm not quite sure what's going on, but
Yeah,
we lost Anthony, I think.
yeah, I can go ahead and so sorry, Susan. So yeah, as we made that transition, what that meant was staff could essentially check individuals in on behalf of the customer as if they were the customer when they're taking that call. We also renamed the visit reasons to include a CR code as it is. Previously, the visit reasons included a number, but once we made that transition to the call-in, we added that CR just to distinguish the services provided when individuals are in the center versus those that are calling in, and for reporting purposes as well. Next slide. And in terms of the innovations, I guess I just like to call it some best practices. Really, the best practices started, I think Brian mentioned this earlier, just by leveraging the technology that was already in place. So leveraging the existing tool in VOSGreeter and looking at how we can repurpose that or how we could utilize that for the virtual services that we were looking at. On top of that, we decided during our pilot phase that we would set up mobile stations throughout our career centers, which included the VOSGreeter kiosk throughout the centers. So we just had those intermittent throughout the center for staff to become more familiar with the tool, to engage it, so that they can get an idea or a sense of the customer experience as they were going through that check-in. I think that was probably one of the biggest tools to assist in that transition, which literally was 2 weeks after we implemented, because staff really did have a chance to test out the iPads, walk through the check-in as if they were the customer, and really get that experience once we actually had to transition. And then again, just looking at the renaming or repurposing the CR reasons so that we could distinguish and so that we can keep track of what we're actually doing versus those individuals that are calling in.
And one thing I would add to that is the program indicator, I think was a tremendous time saver for staff. That was implemented about the time we made the transition, and probably one of the most requested items that we had from staff as we implemented VOSGreeter in different offices. So it now indicates that someone's already registered. So if a staff member gets their pop-up or checks someone in, they don't have to look them up first, then do the check-in, or check them in, then look them up. They can see right away that they're Wagner-Peiser registered, or primarily Wagner-Peiser, but other programs as well. Okay, and this is just a bit of information about the time period where we were using exclusively those COVID reasons for the Guilford office, which is probably the more populated area of the two. Visitors, it's specified 3,084 visit reasons. Those were 2,981 specific unique individuals for that time period. And then at High Point, theirs was 1,736 visits and 1,679 distinct individuals. And that was during the time period of almost exactly 4 months. We began on March 23rd, and then the transition back to the office, those reasons were, regular reasons were put back on the greeter July 23rd. So, so between the two offices, they had about 5,000 calls logged. That was data that would not have been captured without the transition.
Brian, those are outstanding statistics, and it's very impressive. Was there a visit reason that you saw that was more used than others?
I noticed, well, especially the first 2 weeks we implemented, it was already heavily towards unemployment insurance reasons. That's what we saw primarily, and then, you know, as I guess word got more, okay, you need to contact the employment agency for much of what you're doing, you know, that did decline a bit, but those did seem to maintain fairly steady throughout the process. But especially those first 2 weeks, and I didn't put those statistics in there, but there were, Guilford alone, there was at least 1,000 check-ins, and roughly half of that was for unemployment reasons. And then for them, a large number of their check-ins are for using those resources there, which I'm drawing a bit of an assumption, but I think a number of those were probably for filing claims as well. So, but the resources seem to be their primary service offering that was really getting traffic through the door.
Hey, Evan, just before we go over to Q&A, I know we have time for some questions, but I wanted to thank everyone, obviously, for their participation. I think all the information shared was excellent. I appreciate all the participation. With Susan, Brian, and Anthony covering the VOSGreeter things, I wanted to make a shameless plug for upcoming innovations. We're also adding the ability for staff to text visitors from within the system. That'll be coming out soon too. So just wanted to share that shameless plug.
I don't think that's shameless, Mac, and I think that's very cool. I see a lot of companies and organizations using text messaging these days, so I think it's a very timely feature. Just recently, my dentist texted me to let me know I had an appointment, so I was very appreciative of that. So I just wanted to open it up to the audience to see if anybody has questions, and if you want to put a question in the question pane, you can. I see we have a few here. One question is, how are the veteran services operating? This is from an LVER in the state of Florida, and are the centers open, they ask. And I guess that could be for anybody.
I'll try to answer that. Susan's trying, but I think she's still muted. Some of our offices are open. I think we have at least 20 that in North Carolina that are still closed. Our DevOps and leavers, when we first went out and worked virtually, they also worked virtually. They specifically already had all the equipment they needed. So one of the things that we did in North Carolina is that they tapped that staff to go work on our UI call center because of the equipment they already had. So for the first few months, they were not working at all in their normal vet roles. They were helping the UI call center. We sent 250 of our staff, our workforce staff, to our partners who handle UI. And so they were a large chunk of that. But since they've came back, they are able to work virtually and remotely just like everybody else.
Thank you, Michael. And I have another question here. When implementing the VOSGreeter in offices, was the high contact area of the iPads thought of, and are these cleaned after each person's use? And is this information entered by the staff members, they ask?
Well, at the time we began working on their implementation, COVID or pandemic hadn't been really thought over the implications of it, frankly. So that's something, around March 1st or so, when we were turning the key on it, that we first started really hearing reports and started having those concerns. As far as the cleaning process, I'll let Susan and Anthony maybe address what they were doing in their offices.
Yeah, I see Susan trying to add, and I will say for the Guilford implementation, we actually created at that time when we implemented VOSGreeter, we did have a cleaning plan and purchased electronic wipes for the purpose of cleaning those after each use. We had a schedule for that, and because of the layout of our center, it afforded us the opportunity to have staff at our front desk, as well as staff to monitor the stations so that they can clean those out when needed. Of course, once the pandemic hit, the pandemic onset, we removed the kiosks at the time while we were still open, and once we transitioned to that virtual, the kiosks and the iPads were repurposed.
Thank you, Anthony. And to the audience, I just wanted to say that we are struggling here a little bit with the audio on Susan's line, but we're trying to work that out. unfortunately. But Susan, if you wanted to type an answer, we could do that. I see that you are definitely unmuted here on my side, so I apologize about that. I think what this means is that at some point we'll have to do a follow-up with Susan and the team at the Guilford County Career Center. I think that's definitely something we could do. Another question is, how long were the work centers closed in total in the state of North Carolina for during the pandemic?
It's a wide variety of the 95 centers that are out there. We had some centers that never closed. Well, at least they never closed to staff. They may have not allowed individuals in at a particular time. I think today we're still at 25 offices that are providing services virtually, even though staff may be in the building, that we don't have any visitors to the center. But it was really up to each of the boards to decide how they wanted to do that. In the western part of our state, we seem to have more interest in staying open than we did maybe in our eastern half of the state. So it's a wide variety there.
And Susan, thank you. So Susan is saying that in Guilford County, they were closed from around St. Patrick's Day and opened back up to serve the public July 7th. We have a question from Kelly Grant. Kelly asks, would a QR code be an option for scanning from a personal cell phone to utilize the greeter and to minimize the high-touch iPad or computers?
That sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it, Mike?
Great idea, Mac. We don't think about that. So, we have asked, North Carolina has requested that as an enhancement, specifically to fix the no-touch problem. So they're looking at that right now. So we hope something could come up with that.
It's in the works.
Excellent. Well, to Michael, Brian, Susan, and Anthony, I don't have any more questions coming in right now. To the audience, I will ask, is there any more questions that you would like to ask? Please go ahead and put them in the answer question window. One, I guess, final question that I have, or just as a follow-up, is with the prosperity zones, how do all the zones collaborate to provide service delivery? How do they interface with the 23 workforce boards and the 95 career centers, which, by the way, 95 career centers is an outstanding number. That's very impressive.
Yeah, the prosperity zones are a unique distinction in North Carolina. We try to align them with our economic development zones. And so when we hired some managers to work, we ended up hiring staff that sort of aligned with those prosperity zones. Unfortunately, our boards don't align perfectly within our prosperity zone. So we may have, I think we have at least one of our prosperity zones that 3 boards are in 3 different prosperity zones. So it is a little mismatch. Maybe in the future we can make some adjustments to some of that to fix that. But it is something we intentionally set up in North Carolina to try to align with our economic development.
Thank you, Michael. One more question or another question, and I will, for any questions that we didn't answer, this presentation is being recorded, and we will definitely make it available on a resources landing page, and we'll share that link with everybody who is on the is at this event today. One final question that I have is, as far as North Carolina goes, at the state or county level, is the VOSGreeter used for in-person services, or are they able to be used for incoming phone calls as well, which I think we covered a little bit before, but.
Brian can answer, but I forget, we have 3 or 4 of our workforce boards that are using the VOSGreeter. We've not turned it on statewide. And Guilford was the only one that is using it for the call center. We did we did share that with the other boards, but I'm not sure that any of you just took advantage of that.
Yeah, we had all of capital area, which is kind of our Raleigh capital area. I have several offices there that are back to logging some of the in-person. Probably the office there that makes full use of most of the greeter features is our Johnson County office. They use a lot of the staff-only reasons, where in Guilford's implementation, they're using the comments box. They use our staff-only reasons to communicate those additional instructions to each other. So that's a whole different implementation they have of the greeter. We also have our Cumberland office. They're have fully implemented. They're using it currently. Durham as well is another area that we have active. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Michael. Well, at this point, we are getting right up about to our 2 p.m. time. I want to be cognizant of our ending time here. I would like to thank Michael, Brian, Susan, and Anthony for being here today. My name is Evan Brenner. I'm the Digital Content Coordinator here at Geographic Solutions. We will most definitely make this presentation available, a recording and also the presentation. And we will have those resources out there. We'll send a follow-up email where you can find them. Mac, would you like to say any final words?
I just wanted to thank the group again for all of their kind words today and participating, and all of our audience as well. And I apologize for the technical difficulties, and I hope everyone stays safe out there.
Absolutely, yes. Please stay safe. I know that there has been some weather as of late, so thank you, everyone. Thank you to the audience for joining us today. We are indebted, and my heart goes out to you. So thank you very much. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.